Thank you, Tom. I've been looking forward to this. I came to the University of Pennsylvania as a Wharton MBA candidate with a conditional acceptance. I took the business board exams in the South China Sea in 1964. And as some of you might know, that exam had to be given on a very specific day at a very specific time. And at that specific day and time, we were doing shore bombardment off the coast of Vietnam. So every time there's a salvo, my exam flew off the table, and I'd scramble around, put it back in order, and then the quartermaster would come in and say, "Mr. Bennett, you have 11 minutes to finish section 2, you know? So when my score came back, there was some concern as to whether I might have a learning disability. And fortunately, the admissions people at Wharton called Trinity College, where I'd spent my 4 undergraduate years, and they provided some assurances that I could do this. So the condition was that I not flunk any course the first semester, and here I am. I had my thesis advisor here was a legend, Dr. Ed Shills, just a fantastic guy. I think he had 2 PhDs from Penn, and he was very opinionated. And he found out that I'd had an interview with Johnson & Johnson. And he said, "Ian, I don't want you to work for Johnson & Johnson because all they're going to do is ask you to sell more toothpaste." He said, "We have enough toothpaste." He said, "Ian, do you want to spend the rest of your business life helping people make their teeth whiter?" I said, "No, sir, I'm not going to do that." He said, "You know, I like your thesis." My thesis was on the feasibility of producing man-made fibers in a third world country, which is a capital-intensive industry in a labor-intensive economy. Pretty dry stuff. He said, "I'd like to submit that for an award to the Knitted Outerwear Association here in Philadelphia." And I said, "Yeah, you know, that would be terrific." He said, "Well, the award includes a $500 check, you know." $500 50 years ago. I still think $500 is a lot. But 50 years ago, it was serious. So I saw later that day, I bumped into Dr. Root, who's a marketing professor. Everybody was a doctor here. And I said to him, "Dr. Shills is going to submit my thesis for an award to the Knitted Outerwear Association." And he said, "You're going to win that, Ian." No hesitation, "You're going to win that, Ian." And sure enough, about 5 weeks later, I get a letter from the Knitted Outerwear Association with a check for $500, with a letter of commendation from the chairman of the awards committee, who was Dr. Shills. Okay? Oh my God. Remember that song, "A Railroad Runs Through the Middle of the House"? Okay. So I worked in the apparel industry for a couple of years. My father, who was born and raised in England, had bought a house up in Dorset, Vermont, because it reminded him of the English countryside. So we used to go up there and the kids would ski. And right next to Dorset is Manchester, which has this magnificent old hotel called the Equinox House. It's one of the 2 best hotels in Vermont. The other is the Woodstock Inn, which the Rockefeller family owned. The Equinox House was owned by RKO General. And in the Manchester Journal one week, there's this article that they had given an option to McCluskey & Company, who are a construction company, home-based here in Philadelphia. In fact, they built the Spectrum. So at a town meeting, they did a demonstration of what they planned to do. The Equinox House consists of 4 parcels. There's a mountain parcel of 1,300 acres. Then there's a hotel complex. Across the street is an 18-hole golf course, and beyond that, a private airport, which is a grass strip. So the McCluskey & Company people did this thing where they were going to put up a couple hundred condominiums on the side of Mount Equinox, and everybody who moves to Vermont wants to be the last person who moved to Vermont. The last thing they welcome is change, okay? So the next day I get a call from a guy by the name of Cy O'Neill. And the O'Neill family has a major interest in RKO General. And he said to me, Ian, you may know about the option on the Equinox house. And I said, yeah, I wasn't there, but I heard a pin could drop, and so it sounds like it didn't go well. And he said, no, it didn't go well. In fact, they dropped their option. How would you like to buy the Equinox house? I said, son, I have a net worth of about $3,811. Okay? That's if everything sells quickly at my asking price. Okay? How much do you want for the hotel? He said, $1.2 million. He said, look, Ian, we can work with that. I said, really? Okay. So I had a good friend at Chemical Bank. I called him and I said, this is going to sound a little strange, but, you know, they want me to buy, the owner wants me to buy the hotel. And he said, I'm going to send somebody up there, okay, and we'll look at it. And they decided that what they would do is they would do a appraisal of $3 million and give me a 50% loan. So there I have $1.5 million. I can send RKO General packing, and I have $300,000 of working capital. I mean, why not? So I signed the paper, and 6 weeks later, I owned the Equinox house. It's and I won't dwell on that because it wasn't the finest moment of my business career. But I will share some of the stories because it's there is some humor in this. Okay, I've owned the hotel for probably 3 weeks, and I get a call at 4 in.the.morning from a guy by the name of Joe Fowler. Fowler Insurance was the agent that had the insurance on the Equinox house. And he said, Ian, there's been a power loss in the village, and RKO General used to put candles in the top drawers of the bedside tables. This is a wood frame building. So I said, thanks for the call, Joe. I go to the hotel. Sure enough, my bookkeeper is there doing the night books by candlelight. So I said, where is the night watchman? She said, Ralph is under the piano. I said, why is Ralph under the piano? She says, well, he has a drinking problem. So I walked around to the north wing, and sure, 2 legs are sticking out from under the piano. I wake up Ralph. I explain that I'm the new owner of the hotel. We might have some candles lit, so we need to go around and open these doors to make sure they're not illuminated. So Ralph pulled himself together. The fact is there was no master key. There are 120 rooms, and there's a separate key for each room. So Ralph's key ring looked like one of those things out of a horror movie from the Middle Ages of a jail keeper, So Ralph and I go clanking down the hall of the south wing, looking under doors. Nobody had a candle going. Second floor, I saw a flicker of light. So Ralph, went through the keys, hands me the key. Sure enough, it works. So I walk in there. There are twin beds, okay? The twin bed that's furthest to the right up against the wall is the husband. This was a New England bankers conference. He is sound asleep. His wife, on the other hand, doesn't look like she's a solid sleeper. So I tiptoe in the room. I tiptoe around the foot of the bed and work my way back to the bedside table. And I'm thinking, if she wakes up, I mean, she could lose it, and then her husband would jump on my back. It just could be awful. So, and she had these curlers in her hair. This is 1972. I probably should be careful about hair curlers, but that's how it was. And I leaned, I went right between the 2 beds, and I leaned over and went, whew. And her head was right there. And I had a speech ready. And I said, hi, I'm Ian Bennett. I'm the new owner of the Equinox house. By that time, she would probably have had a heart attack. She did not wake up. That was the good news. When I got back in the hall, Ralph had thrown up. So I said to Ralph, give me the key ring, okay? Clean this up, and I'll finish this, and let's meet back under the piano. So one of the problems was, as I mentioned, the hotel property and the golf course property are really the heart and soul of this complex, and they're in what is called the Village of Manchester. The other two are in the town. The Village of Manchester is run by trustees. There are 7 trustees. 4 of them had the same problem as Ralph, who was under the tent. So getting something accomplished is really very difficult. So finally, I got a long-term commitment for $6 million from a real estate investment trust. It's called the Builders Investment Group. Their home base is in Valley Forge, right here in Pennsylvania. And if you recall, in 1972 and 3, these real estate investment trusts, or REITs as they were called, were going bankrupt. And mine went bankrupt. So I decided that maybe I shouldn't really be in the hotel business. So I called a friend of mine who had an awful lot more money than I did, and he agreed to take over the hotel, and I sat down and typed out a resume. I'm not sure who I thought would hire me, but a friend of mine who was a year ahead of me in boarding school had started a company called MBA Resources, and they handled only guys with MBAs. So I typed in there, Ian Bennett, okay, MBA in International Finance from Wharton, fluent in French, and had my own business and had it fail. I thought, there's a place for humility in your resume. Put it in the mail. This is 73, okay? There's no email. There's not even a fax, just put it in the mail. He gets it at the end of the week and he calls me. He said, Ian, we've been looking for you for 6 months. I said, really? Yeah, he said, there's a joint venture between the National Iranian Oil Company and the government of Senegal to build a fertilizer plant. And they want an American to be the chief financial officer, and he has to have an MBA from a recognized business school. He has to be fluent in French, and he has to have had his own company and had it fail. I said, you're kidding, right? He said, no. He said, this is real. Yeah. So that night, I said, where is the project? He said, you're going to live in Dakar, Senegal. I said, okay. So that night at dinner, I said to my children, my daughter was 9, my son was 5. I said, you guys have 10-speed bikes, you have foam-filled boots. We ought to find out how some people who are less fortunate in the world live. And they looked at me like, how long have you had this problem, Dad? No, I said, this would be a good experience. And off we went to live in Dakar. And that's when I became familiar with Africa. When we arrived there, the guy who was my counterpart for the National Marine Oil Company, his name Ovanis Stefanian, he said, Ian, how long will it take you to put together a budget to build the fertilizer plant? I said, probably 2 weeks. He said, how about a week? I said, okay, I'll give it my best shot. So Voestalpine was an Austrian company who was going to provide the equipment. I put together the budget. A week later, Ovanis and I sit down and I go through the numbers. I said, it's going to cost $14 million. And he said, are you sure about that? I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. He said, you MBA guys are really good at flip charts. I said, really? I didn't know that. He said, yeah, you're really good at flip charts. Why don't we ask, he said, we have a loan agreement with the International Finance Corporation, and they are part of the World Bank. He said, why don't we ask them for 18 million instead of 14? I said, Ovanis, one of the reasons why we MBA guys are so good at flip charts is the information on the flip chart is accurate. Okay? He said, look, Ian, I've got a plane ticket reserved for you next week to go to Washington and do a presentation. Do your flip charts. A week later, I'm in Washington at the IFC, this long oval table, and I'm doing my flip charts. And the last one I say, I think this project's going to cost about $18 million. And the guy at the far end of the oval table, I couldn't see his name, but his name tag said he was from Cargill. Cargill knows an awful lot more about the fertilizer business than I'm ever going to know. So he puts up his hand, and he said, Mr. Bennett, I was hoping for Ian. We're on the same team, right? No, it's Mr. Bennett. And he has a pipe, which is lit. Okay? He has a beard that he's stroking. You know the kind of guy, he's the guy that was in the Woodstock movie and never grew up, So he said, Ian, I have a problem with the $18 million figure. And I'm thinking, Ovanis, he said, I don't think you can do that for less than 24. I said, okay. So I went to meetings the rest of the day. I get back to my hotel at around 10 o'clock at night, and I call Ovanis, who's in Dakar. He's 5 hours ahead of us. I said, Ovanis, I've got $24 million. He said, oh, you Wharton guys. You flip charts. You guys do flip charts. Okay, that's how I got introduced to Africa. I've had some interesting experiences, and I'm going to get to the one I'm involved in now. One more funny one was I got a call from the consulate office in Dubai, and she said, are you in the sugar business, Ian? In fact, I did ship sugar from Brazil to Ghana. But it wasn't futures, it was actually 50-kilo bags of what they call in this industry a Kumsa 45. It's the stuff you have in your sugar bowl out in the kitchen. So she said, the gal wants to know if she can call you. And I said, sure. Give her my number. The one thing that you do before you do any kind of formal business, at least in the international community, is you sign what is called a non-circumvention agreement. It means that this gal won't talk to my suppliers, and I won't talk to her suppliers. And the other thing is, when you meet someone for the first time who's not an American, because English is the language of international business, they want you to know that they speak English, okay? So the gal from Dubai says, she's going to call you probably in about 10 minutes. So I said, okay. So 10 minutes, the phone rings. And the gal said, is this Ian Bennett? I said, yes, it is. She said, are you in the sugar business? I said, yes, I am. She said, I'm prepared to introduce you to the largest buyer in the Middle East of sugar, but first you have to sign a non-circumcision agreement. I said, it's too late for me to do it. Okay. So fast forward to 2009, I get a call from the Senegalese embassy that Abdoulaye Wade, the president, would like to meet with me in New York City. He's at a heads of state meeting for the UN. I don't want to sound important here. If an African president thinks you can help him, he wants to chat. So we agree to meet up there in New York. We do that, and he said to me, Ian, my farming communities having trouble maintaining its harvested crops after the harvest because they don't have proper storage. And specifically the peanut farmers, and peanuts is a major export for Senegal. And I said, what are the losses like? He said about 25% of the annual harvest. It's a serious number. So I get back to my office and I call a fellow by the name of Zano Mataruka in Lagos. He runs the agriculture department. I said, Zano, I met with Abdoulaye Wade yesterday in New York. He said his farmers are losing about 25% of their crop because they don't have proper storage. And he said, Ian, in sub-Saharan Africa, if you talk about fruits and vegetables, the losses are frequently between 45 and 60%. And I said, why isn't somebody doing something about that? Because when an entrepreneur hears there's a problem, by definition, that's an opportunity, right? He said, oh, Ian, it's really difficult, you know, which I thought was great. Okay. So that's what I'm doing now. That's what I'm doing. And I was asked to be a speaker at the Rockefeller Foundation conference here at Penn on food security. And when I got finished talking about the Harvest Protection Network and providing these buildings to these farmers on a self-financing basis, the senior gal from the Rockefeller Foundation came up and said to me, wow, Ian, your phone must be jumping off the hook. And I said, actually, it's just sitting there. She said, well, here's a guy you might want to talk to. He used to work for the foundation, and it turned out that guy was the Minister of Agriculture for Nigeria. Big. That was really big news. So I was able to deliver a building to Ado Ekiti in Nigeria, to a university. And since then, I've been working with a variety of people on how to finance this. And the basic underlying principle for the Harvest Protection Network is that you need three ingredients. First of all, the cooperative farming network has to provide the land for your building. Secondly, the host government cannot tax these buildings as they come into the country. And third, and this is the most critical, I need to have interest-free financing because I'm going to return the money. Essentially, that's a hybrid of a grant funding program, except grant funding is not returned and we're going to return. So I met with a banker in Lagos in connection with this building I'd already delivered. He said, let's go to Makurdi and talk with the governor there about their needs. So we flew up to Abuja and were picked up there, and we drove from Abuja to Makurdi, which is the capital of the Benue state, and along the way we watched vendors throwing tomatoes over their shoulder because they couldn't sell them fast enough. He said, do you have any idea, Ian, how much tomato paste Nigeria imported last year? And I said, no, I don't. He said, $360 million. And these gals are throwing them over their shoulder. I have a 1-minute video that I'd like you to see because it's a really interesting tale to tell. Can you do that?
A busy market in Lagos, these tomatoes are just a small part of the 1.5 million tons produced in Nigeria. Shoppers are lucky to get them though. 900,000 tons go to waste each year.
900,000.
Transportation is an issue, and with the country's power outages, refrigeration is another. But the fruit is a common feature in Nigerian cuisine. Nigeria consumes 300,000 tons of tomato paste a year. The country has to import it from China, though, to the tune of $360 million. Now, Aliko Dangote and the central bank are hoping to put a dent in that bill. They plan to build a $25 million tomato paste factory. Local farmers will get $700 per ton compared to the $350 they currently receive. The plant will be up and running by November and produce 400,000 tons a year.
News that moves. ENCA.com.
Okay, what Mr. Dangote is doing, and he's the wealthiest man in Africa, is filling an existing need. Going back to Dr. Shills, another bit of advice he gave me was it's much easier to fill an existing demand than to create one. The existing demand here is for tomato paste. The existing demand for what I'm doing is to protect these harvested crops from spoilage. So we're both similar in the sense that we're addressing a critical need. And there are people in Africa who are trying to make things better. two friends of mine who live in Nigeria have started the Viziola Foundation, which provides STEM education to girls, science, technology, engineering, and math. They have these workshops where the gals do robotics. They are taught to do some programming. It's called the Viziola Foundation. And if you're philanthropic, go to the ViziolaFoundation.org. And it's a terrific thing. The other is a thing called the Africa.com, who provide a newsletter. Even if you're not thinking about doing business in Africa, it touches on politics, travel, history, art. It's a fantastic newsletter, and it's free. So, before I stop talking here, at the risk of, I realize I'm among my colleagues who hopefully, if you're going to make a mistake, you've already done that, okay? But at the risk of being presumptuous, I'd like to just pass along some advice. Don't buy a hotel. Thank you.